This isn't one of those brush with danger stories that your channel usually does, but it is a creepy experience that is more than worth sharing. My girlfriend and I live in a small house near Kent State University in Ohio. For the most part, it's been a great experience. We got a sweet deal on the price because the former occupants broke their lease in the middle of the semester, and their rental market is dictated by the university schedule. The only downside is my girlfriend wanted to get a cat, and the landlord wouldn't budge on her no pets policy. She stated that she was extremely allergic to both cats and dogs, and she would rather have the house sit vacant than deal with allergy symptoms. It was such a great deal that I encouraged Christina to go ahead and sign the lease. I promised her that we would get a cat when we moved again after graduation. She relented and accepted the terms, and we moved in. Fast forward to a dreary Sunday a few months ago. My girlfriend and I were having a lazy afternoon watching Netflix when there was an unexpected knock on the door. I answered it to find a man on the porch I'd never seen before. He introduced himself as the previous tenant and said he had an unusual request to ask. My girlfriend joined me at the door and we both listened to him explain his story. He said he lived there for 3 years with his fiancée and the dog he'd owned since he was a teenager. At some point, his dog died of old age and he buried her in the backyard. Not too long after that, he came home to discover his fiancée had moved out. She left him a note saying she'd met someone else and that they were moving to Europe together. He realized he couldn't bear living there, surrounded by all their memories, so he bailed on the lease and moved away. He further explained that he had since got his life back together and bought a house in a different state. He found himself back here on business and he was hoping we'd be okay with him digging up his dog's remains so he could rebury her on his new property. As weird of a request as it was, we had no reason to say no. As a dog lover myself, I could understand his attachment. We gave him permission and he thanked us and said he was going to pick up supplies and come back later. That evening he returned with several bags of topsoil and some tools. We unlocked the side gate for him and he carried his supplies to the spot where his dog was buried and started digging. Now my girlfriend is one of those people that claims to be sensitive to the supernatural and the paranormal. Combine that with her love of animals, and she was practically glued to the window overlooking the backyard. Every half hour or so, I'd tease her by asking if she's seen the ghost of Fido yet. She'd roll her eyes and go back to creeping. At some point, I was exercising in the garage when my girlfriend sent me a text letting me know the man had found what he was looking for. I joined her at the window and watched as the man pulled on a rope tied to something in the hole. He gave it a couple of big heaves and pulled out an old steamer trunk. The man must have sensed we were watching because he glanced over in our direction. My girlfriend instinctively dropped the blinds as soon as he looked over. We sat there staring at each other. Suddenly there was a knock at the window. We both jumped from being startled, and then the man asked, "Do you mind helping me out for a second?" I went out back and he asked if I could help him load the trunk into his car. I grabbed an end and was surprised by the weight. I've never owned a steamer trunk, so it's hard to judge, but it felt heavy. We carried it over to the hatchback he had parked in front of the house. He had the seats down and a shower curtain spread out to protect the upholstery. We lifted it into the back, and then there was an awkward moment of silence before he gestured toward the yard, saying he had to go fill in the hole. I went back into the garage and continued my workout. When I was about finished, my girlfriend came out and said he was gone and asked me to go into the backyard with her. We went outside and looked at the spot where he had been digging. Our backyard wasn't much to look at, but the guy did a great job returning everything to how he had found it. I asked my girlfriend if she got any supernatural tingles. She said she didn't, and then we went back inside. And that was the end of that. For a while, anyway. A few months later, our air conditioning went out and our landlord came over to take a look. We got to talking and I mentioned how the previous tenant had swung by to dig up his dog. Our landlord got upset and asked why we didn't call her and run it past her first. I told her I didn't think it was a big deal. My girlfriend then came out and asked why he was allowed to have a pet, but she wasn't. She said it in a joking manner, but I know she was actually annoyed about the selective enforcement. The landlord strongly denied that the previous tenant ever had a dog. She explained that she visited the property on a frequent basis and is very friendly with the neighbors on both sides. There was absolutely no way the tenant could have owned a dog without her knowing about it. We got online and started searching for information about the previous tenant. We occasionally got junk mail addressed to him and his ex-fiancée, so we knew their names. We found their social media accounts, but most of their posts were private. Eventually, after enough snooping, we found a public Facebook post where she was tagged by another man. The post simply stated that the two of them were moving abroad to get a fresh start. They intended to go radio silent for a few years and requested everyone respect their privacy. They promised to check back in once they were ready to interact again. There were a bunch of comments on that post, mostly pleas from her family asking her to call or to reconsider. Some of them were well-wishers letting her know that they loved her no matter what. The comments got less and less frequent as time went by. None of them got a response, not from her or the man that tagged her. My girlfriend and I were stunned by the discovery. Between talking to our landlord and finding that post, we came to the conclusion that there wasn't ever a dog. We suspected that the previous tenant actually retrieved the body of his former fiancée so he could better hide the evidence. And we believe her lover's Facebook account was a fabrication created to justify her disappearance. We've considered reaching out to the family of his ex-fiancée and telling them our theory, but we haven't pulled the trigger on that one. As someone who recently lost a parent, I'd hate to have them grieve and then it turn out to be a false alarm. Anyway, that's my story. Maybe it was a dog, maybe it was a buried coin collection, or maybe it was the evidence of a double murder. Remember, you're never alone, even when you think you are.